Welcome to The Green Rush, a podcast about the intersection of cannabis, the capital markets, and culture. On a weekly basis, hosts Ann Donahoe and Louis Goldberg of KCSA Strategic Communications speak with the business leaders, financial experts, cultural icons, legislators, and generally interesting people moving the cannabis industry forward. This week, Louis and Ann speak with Adam, Orens, and Sal Barnes from MPG Consulting, formerly the Marijuana Policy Group, an internationally recognized cannabis and hemp corporate strategy and policy advisory firm. MPG has completed strategic projects in 27 states and 7 countries for some of the industry's leading MSOs, regulators, ancillary businesses, and investment firms. MPG enables clients to make informed decisions through strategic advisement, research, and analysis. The group has helped shape the policy decisions of some of the biggest states around the regulation of medical and adult use cannabis programs and helped major MSOs get their start. They write the rules, they work with the C-level in the industry, and they're cool guys to boot. Given what's happening in the world right now, this is a must listen. Now on to our conversation with Ann, Louis, Adam, and Sal.
Sal, Adam, thank you guys so much for joining us. When we last spoke, which face-to-face was in December of 2019 at the MJ Biz conference, the world was completely different. Before we jump into what we're going to talk about today, how are you guys holding up?
Things are quiet all around Denver since the stay-at-home orders came along a couple of weeks ago. You can just really tell it when you walk around the city. Everywhere is pretty much empty. They've started to close down some of the city streets for pedestrians to use, which I thought was very good. We're holed up, but doing well. Scared
Are you
to go
stocked?
I was just going to say, I'm scared to go to the supermarket and try my best not to.
I was actually thinking dispensary, but I guess groceries work too.
I'm also afraid to go inside the dispensary at the moment, but a lot of these businesses are, I know the dispensaries and the liquor stores and a lot of other retail stores that are the ones that are allowed to stay open. They've implemented outside the store operations where you can make transactions kind of right outside the store, standing in the parking lot.
Adam, when we last had you on the pod, it was back in September of 2018, which just seems like eons ago. But as a refresher for our audience, can you tell me about what MPG Consulting does and how it's different from the Marijuana Policy Group, which is, who we interviewed last time?
Yeah, so when I founded the firm in 2014, we called ourselves the Marijuana Policy Group, and our initial work that we did was focused on some of those policy issues, those key ones in Colorado that evolved the market into what it is today. And that's how most people came to know us. But what people haven't really heard is, since founding as well, we have quietly done a number of different pieces of work, and we are a strategic advisory firm that has advised, large companies inside and outside the cannabis industry, large government agencies, entrepreneurs looking to enter the market, some of which have grown their companies to become some of the largest MSOs now. We've had a wide range of clients, and we decided last year that we needed to change our name to reflect the work that we've done over the years. MPG Consulting is what we go by now, and we've done we continue to expand that breadth of work into hemp as well, hemp business and hemp regulatory work. And so we think that we needed to evolve the name of our firm, just like our work has evolved over the years.
Yeah, I've heard you describe yourselves as like the Boston Consulting or the Bain of the cannabis world.
Yeah, I think that's a very apt comparison. I think we've been driving strategic thinking in cannabis markets across the U.S. and also internationally since 2014. And I think it shows in the breadth of client work we've done and the breadth of accolades we've received.
Well, I'm giving you plenty of accolades because you guys are clearly among the smartest guys. Well, in all comedy aside, you guys really are, among the smartest guys when it comes to thinking about cannabis. And what's happened in the light of this COVID outbreak is that cannabis has been deemed an essential service in pretty much every state that has a medical program, and almost most of the adult use states as well. And the sales, we've seen from BDS and Headset and all the other data providers showed this massive spike as soon as everybody got the stay-at-home orders, and then it was dipped down, and it seems to have normalized back into what a normal sales cycle would be for them. And in the states that cannabis is sold in, it's some of the, it's among the few stores that are open, and it's among the few stores or industries that are providing tax revenue to municipalities and states. You guys wrote a white paper recently on how states can leverage this tax revenue. Can you, Adam, take a moment and explain this at a high level?
Sure. This is Adam. So we've been thinking, seeing what happened here in Colorado, hearing what happened in other states when some of these stay-at-home orders came about, and just saw how, same as alcohol and then same as toilet paper, there was runs and people went out to stock up on these products. And that really kind of opened my eyes. And Sal and I were talking about it. We also were talking about how, governments in general are going to be feeling the effects of COVID-19 slightly after everybody else does when it hits them in the tax rolls. And, we've seen years of steady revenue out of Colorado, out of Washington, out of Nevada now. We thought it was time to broach this subject, that this could be a bondable revenue stream, a revenue stream that cities can and states can use to leverage to build infrastructure and also to fund social programs and maybe even fund some relief efforts through some of this, some of these mechanisms that are used by cities for, when they build highways or when they build parks. This could go to fund all of that.
Sal, you guys use Denver and Minneapolis as examples of how these cannabis municipal bonds would work. Can you walk us through some of those numbers and really why this idea of CMBs is particularly relevant during a time like this?
And do it slowly. I was told there would be no math.
Okay, so what we did was we took two markets, Denver and Minneapolis, and we examined what the potential bondable capacity would be based off of differing timeframes for bonds, one being a short-term 3-year bond and one being a 10-year long-term bond. For the city of Denver, it was pretty easy for us just to calculate future demand because we have historical sales numbers, and we were able to use product mix, pricing, the general demand curves, and come up with an estimated long-term 10-year tax revenue of $644 million. And that $644 million, after you take on various calculations that go into calculating how much capacity a bond could be, is $591 million in bonding capacity, which equates to about $438 million to use for the initiatives that Denver applies its cannabis tax revenue to, which is education. So from a 10-year bond, Denver should be able to raise approximately $438 million for educational initiatives in the city, which will be much more impactful on a shorter timeline than spaced out over 10 years. In Minneapolis, we did the same thing, except we applied it to their big social initiative, which is affordable housing. So in Minneapolis, we estimated demand based on several factors, demographics, associated price, and we came up with a proposed tax assumption, which is essentially 26.5% total tax. And from that, we were able to estimate the 10-year long-term $343 million in total estimated cannabis tax revenue for the city of Minneapolis. From that, a 10-year bond would have a $314.5 million bond capacity and about a $233 million, we're going to say not immediate, but very much more impactful, affordable money for affordable housing. So if you think about what's important right now in the city of Minneapolis, especially given what's happening in the market as a result of COVID, affordable housing is a very pertinent issue. By creating a cannabis-based municipal bond in the city of Minneapolis, based off our projections, the city should be able to bond approximately $233 million to help with that affordable housing initiative.
Have you guys been in touch with the cities and have you had direct conversations about this? And is that even something you can answer?
So we have in Minneapolis, we did an analysis there and were contacted by some state officials last year. They were interested in learning more about how we could do better calculations and how the market would play off. And I think those discussions are still in progress. But that is sort of the only one. This paper just got released last week, and we are actively reaching out to our government contacts to see the interest in the market right now.
How does the difference?
Its time.
No, it's the right time. There's never been a better time for this than right now.
I agree with you, but I think it's we view it as a topic that is avant-garde for governments to talk about, and investment banks for that matter. But I think the time and maybe these current, tragic times could catalyze that discussion.
How does your paper and your guys looking at this take into account the differences between, say, adult use versus medical states, or it doesn't matter? It's all seen as one thing.
So for this paper and this analysis, we based our calculations solely off of adult use markets because of the tax. Right, it's taxed at a much higher rate. Right. Some places don't even have tax on medical. So this is solely based off adult use markets.
Okay. So what do we need to do to actually make this a reality? Who do I got to call?
Well, I would say, this is Sal, I would say the people, there's two sides of this coin that need to make this a reality. The first is legislators, governors, head regulatory agencies in sizable potential cannabis markets. So, New York would have been a great one. We all know what's going to happen in 2020 with the cannabis regulations in New York as a result of COVID, but New York would have been a great place to start. So once you have those regulators on board, it's also working with the appropriate investment banks who underwrite this stuff and then ultimately sell it into the market. Those are the two major players that need to get on board to do this. And then our piece would be helping both the banks and the municipalities effectively understand their appropriate demand based on several factors, sort of the MPG secret sauce, and then come up with a bond capacity from that.
So states like Colorado, though, Washington, Oregon, Nevada, California, they're ideal for this because they have both, a well-established adult use market as well as a medical market. And, you look at California, it's huge. Are these the states that you guys are looking at? I know we didn't get it done in New York, and maybe we'll get it done in New Jersey in November. But, those 5 states alone are massive.
Yeah, I'd say, this is Adam, I would say that the more mature markets would be the leading ones. I think it's going to take willing banks to market this. But, this is a new revenue source to every state, right? This is a product that was illegal, but now it's been made legal. And communities should be able to reap the benefits of it as well. And these bonds would speed up the investment in this infrastructure, in these programs. And, we found a few examples of states already doing this with their gaming revenues from casinos. I think Iowa was one of them. Mississippi was another. Sal, was there another too?
Iowa, Mississippi, and let me see. I can't just the name off the top of my head.
I bet New
Jersey. On the spot.
Yeah.
Yeah, New Jersey. That's right. In Atlantic City. No, Lewis, that's absolutely right. In Atlantic City, they would. And there's a history of using that. I mean, Atlantic City is a perfect one. They are trying to rebuild the whole city off of those kinds of revenues.
Are you guys doing modeling in any other cities, or have they asked you for them?
Specific to these bonds?
Yeah.
No, not.
I guess it's only been a week, so maybe we'll ask you in like 6 months.
Yeah, I mean, it's only been a week, and also I have a strong feeling that city, government, municipality leaders are dealing with more important things right now.
Yeah.
Let's pivot to the hemp market. Admittedly, it's a confusing market. It's tough for a lot of people to understand, and there seems to be this massive glut of hemp flooding the market. What should the market look like, and who is getting it right and who is getting it wrong? We love for you to name names, but you certainly don't have to.
Oh, come on, gossip.
Spill the tea, gents.
So this is Sal. I'll answer the question in 2 ways. The first is going to be what we're going to say consumer products, consumable extracts of hemp, and the other one's going to be the industrial use side. So from an consumable product standpoint, we're seeing that there's an increasingly apparent industry trend moving towards the route of nutraceutical and pharmaceutical models, right? And I think that brands distinguishing themselves must demonstrate familiarity with established standards for similarly oriented themselves to those other industries, and then clearly communicate that the products they make meet and exceed upcoming standards. One of the things that I think is sort of like the big secret or sort of known unknown in the industry is the concept of stability of any sort of extract, especially when it comes to using that in a soda, in a water, in a drink, and all these, other sort of products like that. CBD and hemp extracted molecules, unless they are at the nanomolecular level, are very unstable and they oxidize in liquid products. What that means effectively is if you have a hemp soda and the way you put CBD in that hemp soda wasn't at the nanomolecular level, the chemistry of that will change very rapidly. So you're going to have a very, very short shelf life. So as these regulations develop from the FDA upon what looks good and what you can and can't do from a hemp extract and consumable space, those products will change, and the companies that do not have those sort of practices will fall to the wayside very quickly. In terms of the industrial market, I think what looks good and what doesn't look good are states who are imploring farmers who are just coming online, like Texas, for example, is doing a good job of this. They're encouraging farmers to try to find buyers and to try to create mechanisms for the industrial supply chain. They're trying to push an imperative that Texas will be an industrial hemp-grown state, realizing that Colorado, California, Oregon, Kentucky kind of have a lockdown on the consumable space, the consumer product space, right? And creating a hemp farm in one of the new states coming online with the sole purpose of growing hemp to then extract it into CBD, CBG, CBN, what have you, is basically a race to the bottom. So we need to start seeing states, investors, entrepreneurs, what have you, really start putting their money where their mouth is, R&D, and anything else they can do to build out the industrial supply chain, because that will be a far, far bigger market than anything on the consumer product side.
I mean, are you looking at this at hemp, and this is for either of you guys, as akin to cotton or tobacco or, soybeans and wheat, where it is just a commodity that it's going to eventually be traded on the commodities exchange? There'll be futures, all the derivative products. Is that how you view this? And how long do you think, if so, it'll take for us to get there?
So I think that this is Sal. So I think that you got to think of it in two ways, right? The one is for that consumer product side. It's my opinion that eventually that process and extraction process and the result of that extraction process will be industrialized to the point where it will just be a couple of big manufacturers who create the most perfect molecule, and then they're sold throughout to all the big CPG companies. So think of caffeine, think of refined sugar. That's what I think the future of the consumer side is. On the industrial side, because there's so many different applications for it, like way more than cotton, right? We have the potential to really grow the hemp market from the industrial standpoint. However, the market on the industrial side and the trading of that hemp does need to grow up. And I think it does need to have an exchange. It does need to have those same regulations, and it does need to be more commoditized. Without that sort of structure, we're still going to have the same chaos that's in the market right now, which is really hampering its growth.
Sal, I think what I have really observed as this goes is, everybody's chasing these ingredients that have the highest profit margin. It was CBD first, now it's CBG. And nobody is kind of building out, and it's got to come in the demand side too of the industrial supply chain, like you're saying, right? Like there's not yet a big national home builder that's using hemp and marketing hemp materials yet. There's no big plastics manufacturer that's using it for plastic containers of any kind or industrial plastics. And it's interesting to observe, to me, just sort of the degree that everybody's chasing these ingredients. I've asked a number of people who are talking about, CBG is great. We're selling all the CBG, and I asked them what it did. Why would someone take CBG? And they couldn't tell me. This was at the Indo Expo in Denver a couple months ago, but it was just interesting to me. So maybe Louis or Ann, you can tell me why people are taking CBG, because I couldn't even find out at a hemp convention. I couldn't find out.
Look, the problem with all of these ingredients, from a medical perspective, is there's no research, there's no clinical trials. We're just being told that, you want this amount of CBD, this amount of CBN, this amount of CBG, this amount of THCA, and I'm calling bullshit because nobody actually knows. That you take something before you go to sleep, and it helps you either go to sleep or stay asleep, but nobody knows. No, it's the same way that you don't know if what vitamin C really does or vitamin D does. Like, there hasn't been the clinical trials.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think, companies, and especially startup companies that are looking for investment, that are just chasing demand for extracts, are going to have a very tough time. At the end of 2019, I think Adam and I probably received 2 to 3 pitch decks a week for extraction facilities or for new CBD product lines, and they're all the same thing, and none of them got funded. right? It's just a very difficult, crowded market that's hard to differentiate yourself in. And one of the things we always see of people claims that for differentiating factor is that they have the best hemp, right? Which is also, it's not, what does that mean in this instance, right? So it is very difficult to compete in that market. And it's even more difficult to enter that market and succeed.
And you guys are working with private equity funds, hedge funds, and the like to help analyze these same pitch decks you're getting. How are you helping those clients of yours, look at the hemp market? Are you telling them wait, or now is the time to get in? Like, what are you talking to them about?
So to Sal, there's two things that we basically do for those guys. One is using, some of our core skills on the policy and regulatory side and providing sort of regulatory de-risking or hedging strategies, right? So if your investment's going to be in this, what's the market going to look like in 5 years from a regulatory standpoint, and will that company still be solvent to do that? So for example, if you're a company that makes a CBD soda, but knowing coming down the line that there's going to be some restrictions on what can be a CBD soda can be like, especially in terms of shelf life, we provide that analysis to say this might change and this company is going to have to change its products or it's going to be gone. On the other side, it's providing that sort of just general due diligence stuff. But most of that is based on demand, right? What's the demand for these different extracts going to be? What's the demand for these different products going to be? What's the consumer profile? What's the size of the market? And then, the other sort of more granular, like how's the operating team look like? What's the operations look like? How are their financials? What's the balance sheet strength? Like, does this make sense? All those things. So it's a wide variety of services, but it can be broken up into, normal due diligence and then regulatory due diligence and hedging.
So in addition to that side of your business, you guys also work with governments, federal governments, the U.S. and Canadian government to help write the rules, for this industry, essentially. But you also work with MSOs to help obtain their licenses, and you've developed and executed international expansion strategies. Can you talk a little bit more about the process of working on both sides of this?
I can take this one. This is Adam. And at the risk of sounding a little cliched, it just takes doing good, honest work for your clients. It takes understanding what their objectives are. For a business that's looking for a strategy to enter a new market, you have to be conscious of what the regulatory environment is and what their business opportunities and strengths are. And you have to give them an honest assessment. And call their baby ugly when needed. But the same can be said for a government.
Breathtaking. The baby is breathtaking.
Breathtaking.
Government's success in this is hinged on industry success in a lot of ways. Governments have shown amazing aptitude at either overly controlling these markets or letting them run unfettered. And on either side, there are some consequences for governments, but then also for businesses. So, in our mind, this is just all kind of wrapped together, and it takes understanding really at the core of this is how big is the market going to be in this area that we're talking about. Could be a state, could be a country, could be a city, and whether our clients are a business or a government, once you know that, you can implement your objectives, whether that's regulating or whether that's carving out a piece of the market for your business.
You guys were integral in helping shape the Canadian market. You were integral in helping shape the Colorado market. What's the fundamental difference between the way Canadian regulators look at these markets versus U.S. regulators, other than their unfailing ability to be more polite in Canada than in the U.S.?
This is Adam. Yes, everything is definitely has a sheen of politeness in Canada, and I do enjoy doing work there. In Canada, it's just a different history of the role of government there. And so a regulator looks at things differently than one in the United States. And they just have a lot of different systems that, like, for instance, in Ontario, The government sells liquor and is also, for a time, was proposed to be the distributor and retailer of cannabis. So, in Canada, they're really trying to kind of file cannabis along with some of their other systems. And in the U.S., things can go either way, where sometimes these states become legal through a ballot process, and the ballot process defines what these systems will look like in each state. And in other states, the legislature defines it, and they look a lot differently. And a generalization is, in the West, it was the markets were planned by the advocates, and in the East, it's more the legislature.
What's the single dumbest thing you've been told by a government official?
I don't think I can name names on that, and I can't remember a single statement, because to generalize, they're all government officials are always very careful about what they say. But I can give you an observation that I've seen, which is in some places I've observed that governments in the name of public safety and in the name that selling cannabis is going to be a new thing in their state, they try and restrict it and control it very heavily. And this has happened in a lot of different states. And in doing that, they do that to try and keep public safety and public health objectives in line. But what they do is that the consequence of that action is the exact opposite of what they intend. And it really entrenches the illicit market. This happened in California. The legal market's been slow to absorb there because of difficulties at local government level, high taxes, difficult and long processes for gaining licenses. And, the illicit market was strong before and is strong now there for those reasons.
Can we talk taxes for a second? Because, the illicit market in California is still 3 to 4 times the size of the illicit market. If you could sit down with the state of California, what's the right tax rate? Like, where's that the bliss point between making enough money to help fund the projects you need to do, or making enough money that you could actually bond against, versus too much where you're going to drive consumers back to the illicit market?
So there is no one magic rate, and it depends. But what we've seen in Colorado, Nevada, and Oregon too, is that if you have your tax rate, below 35%, and somewhere between 20 and it's a wide range. You could use between 20 and 30-ish%, let's just say, has shown to be working in places like Colorado and other states.
I would say also for California specifically, right? Tax rate is one issue that they're going to deal with, is the price differential between the illegal and the legal market. Another thing that California needs to do is fund and properly enforce its legal cannabis market restrictions. That is a challenge that they're facing right now. And whether that's a resource issue or it's a legislative issue, California's kind of got to clean itself up a little bit, and then it will have an absolutely flourishing market. But until they do something to put a dent in that illegal side of it, it's going to be very difficult for them to really realize the true benefits of that market.
Louis, taxes are just one part of this. It also, a lot has to do with how many stores are around and what are the prices in them, and when there's enough access, and when it's as easy to go to your legal cannabis store, and the prices are at or lower than what you could get and just as convenient as what you could get prior to that with an illegal relationship, then the legal market will win at that time. Taxes are part of it.
Do you guys, this is just a question. It occurred to me because, Adam, you called them stores, right? And the official nomenclature is dispensaries. Do you think that those types of words matter? I mean, Sal, you caught yourself and changed, saying the black market to the illegal or the illicit market. But does calling a cannabis store a dispensary, do you think that there's a disincentive to it? Because I'm going to a dispensary. I'm doing something that's, not quite kosher versus, I'm going to the store. I'm going to the liquor store. I'm going to go pick up a 6-pack. I'm going to the cannabis store. I'm going to go buy a pack of pre-rolls. Do you think that stuff matters?
I think the word dispensary comes from the fact that the first of these establishments were medical cannabis dispensaries. And dispensary has that sort of pseudo, therapeutic, like you're going somewhere to get some therapy for yourself. And, I guess you caught me talking more about how things have become here in Colorado, where going to, as I call it, a cannabis store is more akin, on the adult use side, is more akin now in a lot of places to going to the liquor store, in the way that it's merchandised, presented, and the experience to me skews more that way. I think, there are certain establishments, depending on what their angle is, that would skew more towards you feel like you're in a place where you're receiving therapy or medicine. I think it all has to do with the marketing, but I think it's an evolution we're talking about here. Yeah.
Sal, you were talking about the difference between regulation and taxation and the impact that both of those play on the conversion from the illicit market into the taxed and regulated market. You guys spend a lot of time looking at how provinces in Canada are going through the regulatory process and consulting with them, states in the U.S. and cities in the U.S. are. Who do you think has done the best job in structuring a regulated market, and why are they doing better than others?
This is Sal, and I'm just gonna give this is my opinion, and Adam can have his own. I think Colorado's done the best so far. I think Colorado's done the best, right? I think we've effectively absorbed illegal market demand. The prices are in line, and the tax revenue is being used for, social good, such as educational imperatives. So to me, that's what good looks like, right? From the other side, you got to think, basically, if you are a government and you don't properly address demand, you are encouraging illegal market activity on either side. So demand has these two guardrails. On one side, you have too few dispensaries or outlets for people to effectively get the cannabis they desire. So you're not effectively fulfilling legal demand if you have too few outlets for that. If you have too many on the other side, then you're encouraging people who have an oversurplus of cannabis to sell that in the illegal market, and that usually goes to another state. So these guardrails have to be effectively created. You have to have the right number of cultivation or space of cultivation. You have to have the right number of processing facilities. You have to have the right number of dispensaries to properly address demand. And with that, you will effectively absorb the illegal market demand. Colorado's done a fantastic job at that.
And I'll obviously second that, being a 20-year Colorado resident. I think, though it wasn't always a smooth ride, the state here has been thoughtful about its tax rate, about access, and about having enough product at the proper prices. And while I don't think it'll take a long time for illegal markets to ever go away in cannabis, it's not until it's federally legal will that really start to happen. I think Colorado's almost fully absorbed all they could possibly absorb in the regulated market. And most people that are using cannabis in Colorado, residents and tourists that come here, are using the regulated market and not going to the illegal market.
We usually ask this question in a little bit of a different way. We usually ask, what stories is the media missing? What would you like to see in, on the front page of the Wall Street Journal? But I guess I want to broaden it out a little bit more and ask, in general, what trends are we missing? So what are you guys seeing? You have access to a lot of data. What are you seeing that just hasn't made it mainstream yet? And this question can go to either one or both.
I'll take that one. One thing that I saw that I was pretty surprised recently was that Colorado's cannabis sales revenue and total sales for the year last year actually started rising again at a pretty fast rate. And we had thought, 4 years ago that, this would be the point in time where we'd be seeing a plateau of revenue of sales. And it started to slow a little bit from 18 to 19, or I should say in 2018. But then in 2019, it started going up again. And I could only say I think it's because, people are consuming more cannabis, is becoming a more widely used product by adults in Colorado. And despite the fact that prices have been going down quite a bit, there's still sales going up every year now. So that was my latest surprise, sort of related to the markets and data in cannabis.
How about you, Sal? What do you think is that there's something that's kind of percolating underneath the current of what everybody's paying attention to, but you're looking at going, there's some real opportunity?
So I don't know if this opportunity. I just think this is going to be becoming more common, and we'll see it more and more common. I believe that there is going to be, in the consumer hemp industry, much more class action lawsuits against hemp companies who haven't kept historical testing records appropriately and have been making claims about efficacy of their product. That's what I really think is going to happen, right? We kind of were in the Wild West stage for a while. And as these companies get bigger and have enough war chests to survive a class action lawsuit and actually pay it out, I think that there's going to be a lot more of those in the market.
Okay, let's flip this for a second. And this is my favorite question. It's about failure. You guys are both really successful, and people look at you and say, "Oh, this could be an overnight success for you guys," but we all know that it takes a lot of swings and misses before you hit a home run. Adam, can you talk about either a personal or a professional failure that helped make you the success you are today? And then Sal, talk about what your most favorite or interesting project has been.
Sure, I get the failure one. Huh? All right.
Look,
You want failures from both.
Okay, no, I'm fine. I'm happy to. Yeah, God, if I can count on how many times I've swung and missed on either proposal efforts or, interviews with a client that you think you're going to get, or, who was that? Michael Jordan that said, you're going to miss 100% of the shots you don't take, or he's missed, it's an amazing miss of free throw percentage for final winning shots. But, there was one that particularly stung, and this was early in our cannabis career. This is back in 2013. We had joined up with a number of early cannabis pioneers in Colorado to chase some work in Washington State. And we all spent a lot of time putting our different pieces together. And there was a law firm, and there was a notable cannabis cultivation and retailing operation, and us were in it, and we worked for weeks on writing this thing. And then when it was time to send it in, whoever sent it in missed the deadline because the attachment was too large on the email. And this was our first big swing in the cannabis world, and it was like a colossal miss. And but about couple months later, we had a similar thing happen. It was a colossal win. And so it just goes to tell you that, one door shuts, another one opens.
So on the flip side, then, what's your most or favorite interesting project?
Most favorite. I like that. Most favorite.
Not your favorite,
Yes.
your most favorite.
So we have a combination of, all of our projects are very interesting. I think my top favorite three are working with a Swiss pharmaceutical company to help them enter the Canadian market and develop a cannabis-centric pharmaceutical product for senior citizens that had a sublingual delivery mechanism. We got to do a market analysis, find a partner, understand who their customer profile was, and determine different products, including veterinary products for them. We've also done some interesting work with Native American tribes to help them understand the potential of a cannabis operation on their tribal lands and how that would integrate with their current revenue streams, including their entertainment, their casino, alcohol sales, and things like that. And then finally, I think it's our work with the Colorado Department of Agriculture to do the CHAMP, which is the Colorado Hemp Advancement Management Plan. And that just really puts us sort of at the forefront of the hemp industry, working with some of the, stakeholders across the value chain who are just really ahead of the curve and helping develop that whole ecosystem. So all three of those, I think, are equally favorite and different, but still very cool.
Guys, is there anything else that we need to talk about? Because you have been absolutely fascinating. Anything else?
No, Louis, thanks so much for having us on. And I hope you guys are staying safe and healthy in your seclusion.
We're staying
Dude,
selfie.
I've been self-distancing for almost 50 years, okay?
You're ready for this.
I was born to be socially awkward and distant from people.
They're not saying be socially awkward. I think you're mishearing that, Louis. They're just saying be socially distant.
What's the difference for me? It's, what? The more awkward I am, the more people want to stay away from me. I don't blame them.
On that note, thank you guys so much. We really appreciate it. This is great.
Special thanks to Sal Barnes and Adam Orens from MPG Consulting. To read the white paper on cannabis municipal bonds or to just get in touch with them, go to mpg.consulting. As always, we want to hear from you. Find us on Twitter at @the_greenrush or on Instagram at @the_greenrush_podcast. I'm never going to be okay with those not being the same handles. Never. You can drop us an email at greenrush@kcsa.com. We're always looking for feedback, for guest ideas, for better designs, for homemade masks, for ways to be less socially awkward when I'm distancing from people. Basically, whatever you guys want, you can email me and I will listen to it. I want to thank Anne for, as always, being an amazing co-host, Shay for being a great producer, Nick Opich for being in the heat in Arizona. He got stuck there when he got married. Please don't forget to subscribe to The Green Rush in your favorite podcatcher, which includes iTunes and Google Play and Stitcher and just basically anything. And that is one take, Shay. One take.
Cannabis.